Every collaboration starts with an introduction, a moment in time where the stars align at the right place, at the right time, and with the right people. It's the connections we make with one another that form the foundation upon which we build our future. Put simply, it's the start of something new. And when we take those first steps toward positive change, toward our hopes and dreams, we treat the connections we make with care. Because with years of experience, we've learned that the path we choose is not nearly as important as those who walk it with us. No matter the end goal, the trust we choose to put in others is the biggest investment we can make for our future. The Capricorn Group has been walking beside dreamers since 1982, connecting them with the right people and solutions to turn their ambition into opportunity. And it all started with an introduction. Capricorn, we are stronger together.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special broadcast from Windhoek, Namibia. A special welcome to Hein here with me in studio, the CEO of Gondwana Collection Namibia, and our special motivational speaker, Hein Wagner in Sweden. And all our online guests, obviously. This is a great opportunity and we welcome you. Namibia is now in its third COVID wave. And unfortunately, many have suffered tremendously due to this. Lives are lost and families are torn apart. This reality hit close to home, as many of our colleagues within Capricorn Group and the larger Namibia family have experienced the devastating effects of the virus spread and impact. We can fight, flight, or freeze during these uncertain times, but it is crucial to have a positive mindset. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a lot of negativity and especially fear. Yet, if you talk to anyone who has survived the virus, they will tell you that a positive mindset pulled them through. We at Capricorn Group and our partner and co-host Gondwana Collection Namibia can both testify that positivity in adverse circumstances, whether personal or in business, is sometimes the only thing that keeps you going and pushes you towards victory. I want to quote Roy T. Bennett, who wrote in his book, The Light in the Heart, "Keep going, your hardest times often lead to greatest moments in your life. Keep going, tough situations build strong people in the end." I agree with this sentiment. At Capricorn Group, we hold fast to our brand promise of being connectors of positive change. It does not mean that everything is always positive. Instead, we have often faced difficult circumstances, and I can recall the heavy droughts we've had just recently, the recession starting in 2017, 2018, and many other challenging events. But we've pulled through, and we were able to help our farmers, our clients, and many others through this corporate social responsibility program. This was possible because we are committed to being connectors of positive change, no matter what circumstances we face. The founder of our flagship brand, Bank Windhoek, famously said that we are a bank in good times and in the bad times. Even in this pandemic, Capricorn Group has supported our government substantially in the fight towards the pandemic. Our latest contribution, along with other private sector colleagues, being towards the import of emergency oxygen supply from South Africa. A positive mindset always starts with a decision to impact any given situation, no matter what you face. I was amazed and interested in learning of a man, not just any man, but a blind man, who has seen and achieved more than most people with the gift of sight through his positive mindset. Hein Wagner's story has inspired me greatly, and therefore, together with Gondwana, we would like to share this inspirational story with you today. As an introduction, Hein has been blind since birth, but he has many accomplishments to his name despite this. He has completed the Absa Cape Epic, ran the Antarctica Marathon, the 2 Oceans and New York Marathons, completed full Ironman, competed in the World Triathlon Series in Cape Town, finished several Cape Town cycle tours, tackled the white waters of the Zambezi River, climbed the 10 highest mountains in the Western Cape, completed the Cape to Rio yacht race, holds the world blind land speed record at an impressive 322.52 kilometers per hour, and more. Hein Wagner is a living proof that despite the challenges that come our way, anything is possible. He does not allow his blindness to stand in the way of his dreams, and people often refer to him as the blind man with exceptional vision. Through this talk, Hein will open your eyes to a world of possibilities. And I have also reliably come to know that the part that's not on Hein's CV is that he also hunted an oryx in Namibia very successfully. So it's really also a key link to Namibia. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you Hein Wagner. Thank you.
I have conquered the one thing the sighted fear most, darkness. I inspire people to achieve the impossible by turning huge obstacles into major opportunities.
Thank you for the welcome, Tinus, and it's so nice to hear that Afrikaans Namibian accent. I almost became a little bit emotional here in Sweden, thinking back of the great times and moments I've had in your beautiful, beautiful country. From Ludritz to Swakop, from Swakop to Windhoek, from Windhoek to Gubabas, to the north of the country. I remember being on a farm once out in the countryside in Namibia, where I, for the first time in my life, heard the silence sound like an orchestra. So, and particular good moments of cycling the Desert Dash a few years ago, 369 kilometers on a solo, well, on a tandem, of course. On solo, it wouldn't go so well with me. But greetings from Sweden, and thank you for the invitation to join you today in these, let's call it, unprecedented uncertainty that the whole world is experiencing, as far as wide as Sweden, as far as wide as Namibia, South Africa, all around the globe. And today, I guess my purpose for today is I want to share with you 3 universal laws that has helped me as a blind person to navigate the unknown. It has also generated so much light into my life since I started using these 3 universal laws on a daily basis. I also want to deal and talk a little bit about fear, because as Tina's also mentioned, fear forms a critical part of all our lives at this time. So those of you that don't know me, I was born blind, and the only thing that I've seen before is stars, hundreds, thousands, in fact, millions of stars. And that happened the last time I didn't believe my guide dog and I walked into a tree. So these days I believe the animal. People often also ask me, but Hein, how does a blind skydiver? You do skydiving, are you crazy? I say, yeah, a little bit. But how do you know when you're close to the ground? Well, it's quite simple and easy, because I can actually feel the slack on my guide dog's leash. Then I know now is a good time to open up. No, I'm just kidding. So I was born with a condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis. I don't expect you to remember this. All it means is my eyes apparently cosmetically developed fairly okay, but the receptive cells on my retinas did not develop. That left me completely blind by birth. It also left my parents completely freaked out. when I was 6 months old, when they actually discovered, initially they thought there was something wrong with my hearing because I moved something and I wouldn't respond in front of my eyes. Then they realized, the doctors discovered, no, it's nothing wrong with my hearing. I can't see. So mom and dad did not know what to do because there was no registered blindness in our family. So like any ordinary family, I had an older brother who was sighted. They were just completely devastated by having a blind child. But mom and dad did some research, and at the age of 5, I was posted off to a little school 100 kilometers north of Cape Town in a dorpie called Worcester. Now, it was the second most traumatic experience of my life when my parents dropped me off at boarding house blind school at the age of 5. Think about this. For the first 5 years of my life, I could easily find my way to the kitchen, to the bathroom, to my bedroom, especially my bedroom, that deep, dark cave I never, ever wanted to leave, to face the bright lights of society. But mom said, stay at school. And I got so lost, I couldn't find my way to my bedroom. Some days I couldn't find my way to the bathroom in time, and at least I got an excuse. I can't see where it is, so it helps a little bit. And soon I realized these blind kids are walking around the school grounds making all sorts of funny noises. One would click his tongue, another one would slap with his hand on his thigh. And I phoned my mom. I said, is this a school for blind or mad children? Why are they clicking their tongues like this? Soon I realized if I didn't click my tongue whilst walking down the passage, all these blind buggers kept walking into me. So I started making noises to avoid them. The only thing I wanted to do in blind school was go back home. I couldn't wait to get back to my normal life in amongst my normal sighted friends whom I used to know since I was in my diapers, back at my little cozy home, family home in Durbanville, Cape Town. And I had to wait 5 weeks to do that for the first time as a 5-year-old. Why? Because the teachers told my parents, there's no way you can take this child out at this young age after a week. He or she will never, ever be able to adapt to this new environment. There I was, counting the days, the hours, the minutes for mom and dad to pick me up. The Friday afternoon arrived. I got into the car. I was super, uber excited to hang out with my sighted friends again. We were driving over the mountain back to Cape Town, and I couldn't wait to get out the car and connect with them. And as I stepped out the car in Durbanville, stood in our driveway, I experienced my single biggest traumatic experience. I was completely, totally rejected by this little group of sighted kids whom I used to know since I was in my diapers. I couldn't believe it. What went wrong, guys? You knew when I left I was blind. Nothing has changed in 5 weeks. Why am I not welcome? And as I'm standing in our driveway, I can hear them all playing around on their bicycles up and down the road. And I'm thinking, but you know, if I want to reintegrate into this group and be accepted, the only thing I have to do is get onto a bicycle. Now, blind kids, blind 5-year-olds, in fact, blind 10-year-olds, blind kids in general do not own bicycles. Unless your parents are fairly sadistic, you will not own a bicycle as a blind kid. My brother, of course, owned one. He was 2 years older than me. The bike was twice my size, but I took his bicycle out the garage and I decided today I'm going to join these kids. I will be accepted back into this group by doing what they're doing. 2 hours later, I'm still walking up and down the driveway with the bike next to me. No idea how am I going to do it. 3 hours later, the tears are running down my face as I realize that you will never be able to do this, Hein. And I was about to throw the stupid bicycle down and just walk away from it and give up on it, when a little voice in the back of my head said, take 4 more paces. Within those 4 steps, I could hear as clearly as daylight the reflection of the bicycle's noise, the clickety-click sound that bounces, that comes from the gears at the back of the bicycle, bouncing against the pavement, coming back at me, a tiny little noise. But it was so clear, I could hear it. And I decided that if I focus on this tiny little noise hard enough, I can actually use it because the pavement is in a straight line. If I keep the same distance, the same level next to the pavement, I will be able to cycle on my own. 2 weeks later, I was going up and down the driveway. 3 weeks later, I took that bicycle out on the road. 2 months later, I was challenging all these sighted kids. I said, come on, guys, do you want to dice me? I promise I keep my eyes closed. Many of them didn't take up the challenge. So blind school initially was horrible. I hated it. But my high school years, it became the most phenomenal place because all of a sudden I realized, hey, you're in and amongst 300 blind kids. The common denominator, blindness. We made plans. We solved issues. In fact, we were running the world from boarding house. The world just doesn't know. And I actually loved my schooling. I also was exposed to early day technology. In fact, I remember sitting in the back of our physiology class at blind school. We had physiology, not biology. The rest of our curriculum was exactly the same as the mainstream sighted schools. But we had physiology because the only reason for this was the teachers searched the entire planet. They couldn't find a strong enough microscope for the blind guys. They said, let's stick to something you should know fairly well. At the age of 15, 16, the development of the human body turned out to be a fascinating subject. I'm sitting in the back of the physiology class whilst my teacher is discussing the functionality of the eye. What a boring subject. I'm bored out of my brain. And I'm thinking about all the ordinary things that teenage boys think about. And she said something in the classroom that morning that struck a chord with me. And it brought up this question in my mind. How many kids are actually born with my eye condition, LCA? And I thought, oh, what a neat idea. So I actually sneaked out the classroom. I made my way to the library to go do some research on this topic. By the way, our physiology teacher was also blind. She never saw me leaving. It was incredible having blind teachers. You could easily pull the wool over their eyes. 15 of us in the classroom, 10 would sneak out and sit in the sun. And the 5 that stays behind us goes, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. I got into serious trouble for my yes, ma'am jokes, but I made my way to the library. I dusted off a number of Braille books because, believe me, if you attempt to read a Braille book under the dust, it becomes an incredibly long story. You never, ever get to the real point. But after some research that morning, I discovered that only just one out of 80,000 kids are born with LCA. And I had a choice that day. I could either see this as the most negative thing that I've ever discovered, or the alternative was to embrace it with everything I own and say, hang on, Hein. The fact that you're different to 80,000 kids is the most unique, the most special, and the most positive thing that you've ever discovered. Let me be brutally honest with you. The single most difficult decision I've made to date. But the one thing that I've learned in life, my friend, if you make a decision based on your gut feeling, that feeling from deep within, do yourself a favor. Stick to that decision because it might just be the best one you've ever made. I was in my matric year that I realized that, Hein, there are only 2 things that stands between you as a blind person and being dependent on others for the rest of your life or completely independent. And that happened to be technology and education. Now, I fell in love with the latter part. I was the first blind kid at the school to write my entire final exam on a desktop PC. And this was more than where are we now, 30 years ago, when computers were still not that accessible for the blind. But I finished my schooling and I realized if I invest my time and energy in technology, I will land a job in the IT industry and I'll be the happiest man in the world. So I enrolled for every single computer course that you can think of. I moved back to Cape Town, did more courses, got great results, fantastic grades. I was so interested in it. And I started mailing out my CV to hundreds of companies in Cape Town. And I thought, well, I'm going to land a job in no time. I mean, I'm getting these fantastic grades for my COBOL programming, other programming languages. And at school, I participated in everything from drama to debate society, you name it. I had athletics, cross-country running, anything to get out of boarding house for a little while. So I thought my CV looked good. 6 months later, still not a single reply, not even a letter of regret to say we don't want you. I was expecting just a no would be better than nothing. But that no didn't even come. And as I sat in my bed one morning, I realized, but hey, this is crazy. You know what is going to happen to you for the rest of your life? You cannot sit on your parents' neck for the rest of time. Become something. But I'm doing it. I'm trying. And that morning in my bed, I realized that there's a big mistake on my CV. It's actually only 3 words. You know what it was? Blind since birth. So I took it away. I deleted it. No more. I'm gat vol. I'm done. No more. Took it away. Mailed out the same piece of paper. Within 5 days, I had 4 interviews lined up in the CBD of Cape Town, and I felt quite chuffed because none of those people knew there was a blind man on his way to the interview. So I got onto the bus, Durbanville, Cape Town, hopped onto the train, went all the way to Cape Town, walking up Strand Street to my first interview. You try this with your eyes open. As I was walking up to the first offices that I got an interview scheduled for in Strand Street, Cape Town, I actually bumped into a blind friend of mine. It wasn't too difficult. He didn't see me coming. And he's like, "Hein, hoi, 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 how are you? I haven't seen you in a while." I'm like, "Buddy, I've never seen you before, but I'm okay." He says, "Hein, I read in this magazine about this gentleman who wants to sail from Cape Town to Rio with 2 blind guys on board a yacht." I'm like, "What are you reading? Did they now print the sun in Braille?" He said, "No, this is," I said, "But how on earth?" He said, "I don't know, but there's an interview at Saturday morning at the Royal Cape Yacht Club. If you're interested, pitch up. That's all I can tell you." I didn't even know how to get to the Royal Cape Yacht Club from where we were having the conversation. And my only experience of sailing was a cocktail party on a yacht a few weeks before. But that Saturday morning, I left home with a very particular attitude, because the news that I got was that there's going to be 2 blind guys on board that yacht. And I decided, no matter what it takes, that I will be 50% of them. So there I arrived at the Royal Cape Yacht Club. I met the skipper, phenomenal guy. And the next thing I did, shook hands. The next thing I did is I climbed onto the yacht, and I literally started crawling on my hands and my knees, exploring every single square inch of that boat with my fingers. Because I knew if I can visualize this thing, if I can get it into my head, if I can understand the functionality of this boat faster than anybody else, I will be on that crew. 2 weeks later, I could take a bilge pump apart and put it back together. I could fix a winch. I knew the rigging. I knew every single knot, rope, and stay on that boat with my eyes closed, of course. Naturally, I was selected to be part of the team to sail to Rio. A few weeks later, our captain came to us and said, "Guys, we're going to deliver another yacht to Port Elizabeth. Our race starts in 8 weeks. I'll be back. We'll be on the start line the 8th of January, 1993, to do the first ever transatlantic crossing with 2 blind guys." Well, it's super excited. They left 2 weeks later in very bad weather, unfortunately, delivering their yacht to PE. They ran on the rocks. He drowned, and so did 2 of his crew members. When I got the news on the local radio station the next morning, I was absolutely terrified. These guys want to make it to PE. We want to make it to Rio. So I phoned up my blind friend and said, "Did you hear this terrible news?" He said, "Yes, Hein. But we cannot fall out the race at this late stage. Imagine the front pages of all the newspapers. Headline of the Cape Times, yacht with blind crew first to quit due to a lack of vision." So we decided we will have to find someone to live this man's vision. Would you believe me? For some odd reason, nobody was prepared to get on board the yacht with the 2 blind guys. A week before the departure of the Cape to Rio yacht race, the only man we could eventually convince to hop on board the yacht with us was a deaf guy. Yes, up until this day, I am convinced of the fact that he didn't listen to our questions. That's why I agreed to come on board. Imagine the chaos the first couple of days. He would point to some ropes, so we would just sit there and stare into space. So he could lip read. So if you speak slowly and you look at him directly, that's, of course, if you know where he is. Otherwise, it becomes an incredibly long story. We kept that deaf guy on a very short leash all the way to Rio. Imagine losing him overboard. How the hell do we park the thing on the other side? Halfway to Rio, 1,000 nautical miles on the nearest piece of land, I'm sitting on board the yacht. I'm playing with the echo sound of that tiny piece of equipment. It could measure effectively up to 4 kilometers underneath the boat. That particular day, it couldn't reach the bottom of the ocean. Do you have any idea what happened to me with 4 kilometers of water underneath me, 1,000 nautical miles to the nearest piece of land? I realized how small I am in this beautiful creation that I live in. And at the same time, I realized that I could become and I could achieve whatever I want to in this lifetime if I'm prepared to do 2 things. First of all, if I'm prepared to put my mind to it. And second of all, if I'm actually prepared to work for it. In Dr. Wayne Dyer's words, and he says, and I live by this quote, if you can conceive it, actively believe in it, and most importantly, act upon it, no matter what it is, my friend, you certainly will achieve that. So I did land a job. In fact, my first job was for one of the big banks in South Africa. And I started off as a switchboard operator, answering the phone, because that was what blind people did at the time. And, you know, I had to answer the phone 950 times a day. It drove me insane. It was the most boring thing to do. And I've got so much respect for people doing it every day, but it wasn't for me. But I had to do it because I had wanted my independence financially on all levels. In fact, I was working on the bank's computers. I was fixing my line manager's PC, replacing the RAM in his computer, replacing the hard drive, making sure it connects to the network. This is how many years ago. Did it with my eyes closed, but according to him, I was too blind to work in the IT department. Anyway, so eventually I quit my job. I ended up running a small computer business. I got absorbed into an internet service provider. I was started off as a technical call center agent. None of my clients knew I can't see because I could find things on the screen that they couldn't even see, and they cited. Eventually team leader, I moved on to another company. I ended up being international sales manager for Mark Shuttleworth's company. Worked in his organization for about 4 years as international sales manager, massive annual budget. All of a sudden, a team of how many sighted people reporting to me. I enrolled for another qualification for the Open University of London. And I was like, okay, you know, I've got the t-shirt, got the home, bought the car, got the great job in IT. And I felt as empty as a broken glass. Deep within me, I felt, but what was this all about? Now you've achieved it, so what? There's nothing wrong with the job. I love my job, but I felt so empty, completely empty. And I realized, but the reason I'm so empty is I don't understand my purpose. In the meantime, I've done a few adventures. Principals at schools asked me to come speak to the kids. As soon as it dawned upon me, my purpose is extremely simple. All my purpose is to inspire people to turn huge obstacles into major opportunities. Because that's exactly what I did with my big one called blindness. And before I knew it, by discovering my purpose, this thing became a career for the last 16.5 years. I had to start speaking on a full-time basis because there was so much demand for the work that I do. Before I knew it, I was all over the world. I could wake up in the morning and not even knowing which country I'm in. I have to check on my phone. It was crazy. Sometimes I would travel for 2 months in a row. Every day a different destination. I didn't have to market once. I would wake up in the morning, there would be a request from Belgium, Dubai, or from all over the world. And in March last year, in fact, I was about to do a similar presentation in Namibia, and I was in South Africa at the time. The borders started closing. I got onto the last flight out of South Africa, and Joni was still very concerned about my well-being, getting me back out of South Africa, back to my family in Sweden, because we had to cancel the event. Within 72 hours from that phone call, my entire business that I built over 16 years completely collapsed. It fell flat on its face. The conference industry completely crashed. I got back home. I was booked up for 18 months in advance, all over the world. It was wiped clean. I was sitting on the couch here, but it's now my studio, home studio. I was thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to, what am I going to do? I've got a family to feed. I've got an academy in South Africa with more than 40 blind students that rely on the efforts that we do with fundraising, etc. It's like, I can't let this slip. There must be, they said, go virtual. I'm like, I can't even see the camera. How on earth am I going to do a virtual talk where there's zero feedback? It's like, I might as well speak to the wall. I thought, but I'm going to have to try it. So I turned to LinkedIn, started reconnecting. Fear at the time was suffocating me. I started, well, I need to connect with more people. And there must be a way. Maybe my way of navigating the unknown could help people in these dark times. Before I knew it, 2 months later, I turned this business back around. In the morning, 9 o'clock, I'm presenting to Belgium. 12 o'clock in the afternoon to the UAE, 5 o'clock to Chicago. That would have normally taken me 9 days around the world to deliver those 3 talks. In between those 3 sessions on that same day, I spent 2 hours in the pool with my girl in the morning, my 5-year-old, and had some family time in the afternoon. So yes, there were some positive outcomes also because of COVID. Not all of them, as we can see, are positive. But I had to start looking at this thing from a different perspective. Otherwise, it would have drowned me completely. In my 16 years of having this wonderful opportunity to travel the world, work with leadership groups, work with people from all walks of society, all different cultures, it is, you know, if you asked me this 20 years ago, would this be possible? I would have laughed at you. But the day that I started looking at my challenge, call it what you may, from a different perspective, it became the greatest opportunity I could ever dream for. Now, in my 16 years, I had many, many phenomenal experiences, but one that stands out was a visit to Mumbai, India. It wasn't my first time. The first time I was in India was as part of the African blind cricket team that won the World Cup back in 1998. The second time was to address a group of very successful entrepreneurs. And the next morning after breakfast, my host said to me, Hein, on the outskirts of Mumbai is a tiny little school. And what makes the school unique is only 40 kids. They're on the cusp of one of our biggest slums. But what makes the school unique is all these 40 kids happen to be deaf and blind. Now, I want you to just consider for a moment the implications of not being able to see and at the same time not being able to hear. My personal biggest asset is my sense of hearing. You know, everything I experience, the tapestry of the world that I live in, that I understand, is painted by my sense of hearing. You know, I'm thinking, but how do they do this? How do they communicate with the kids? You know, if you can't hear music, harmony, the things that I love most, I'm also thinking, you know, what if I can't hear people's voices? I'm so bad with faces. If I can't hear their voice, I won't recognize anyone. So he said, I'll take you to the school. We're going to find out. So off we went to the school. I arrive at this tiny little school on the cusp of that big slum in Mumbai with 40 deaf, blind children. I meet one of the most phenomenal individuals I've met in my life. This gentleman has been at the school for 35 years. He's completely deaf and completely blind. He sits in front of an ordinary looking computer, and they tell me this guy's got his master's degree in education. He's sitting in front of a normal computer. It's got a big screen for your benefit that you can look over his shoulder whilst he's typing on a normal touch-type keyboard. He's got a tiny braille display below his fingers that basically translate everything he types in real time into braille. So I can put my fingers on the braille below his keyboard. He types, I can feel what he's saying. In order for me to communicate with him, we simply just swap hands. And I type on his keyboard. Given the opportunity to type on this giant of a man's keyboard, what do you think was my first question to him? Capital letters, sir, how on earth did you achieve a master's degree in education? You're completely deaf and completely blind. His humble reply is, Hein, you have to understand a deaf-blind person's world begins and ends as far as his or her fingers can reach, and within that we have to educate. We swap hands. I start typing. I said, but how do you do this? He told me his stories. I came here as an 8-year-old, Hein. I finished my schooling. I went on to achieve a master's degree in education. Now I'm back. I'm teaching these deaf-blind children. We developed a tactile sign language at the school where the kids physically hold hands. And by moving their fingers, holding hands, they can feel what the other child is trying to say. And by the way, Hein, would you speak to the kids for 10 minutes? I'm like, what? They can't hear me. He said, of course they can't, but there's 40 of them, but the first guy can hear. So they're all sitting in a big circle holding hands. Number one can hear what I'm saying. You're all holding hands, relating it to number 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 8 to 9, 9 to 10. It takes about 13 and a half minutes for the last guy to catch the joke. But you know, he who laughs last in life laughed the longest, even at the deaf-blind school in Mumbai. I was so profoundly moved by that experience. People often ask me, Hein, if you had a choice, would you want to be deaf or would you want to be blind? I can truly, honestly not tell you, but I can tell you this. The one thing I do know is I do not want to be both deaf and blind. And that brings me today to the first universal law that I want to leave with you. And this particular law, ladies and gentlemen, has generated more light into my life than sight can ever begin to do. And that, my friend, is the law of appreciation. Appreciate what you've got, because I promise you there are hundreds, thousands, in fact, millions of people out there that are less fortunate than we are. And remember, the things that me and you, the things we take for granted, someone else right now is praying for. Now, of course, when I was 5 years old, I had no capacity to begin to understand the trauma my parents went through sending me off to blind school. My little girl just turned 5, and I cannot imagine, she's completely sighted, nothing wrong with her eyes, but I cannot imagine leaving her behind anywhere for 5 weeks. It's impossible. But my parents knew at the time it was the best thing that they could do for me, as hard as it may be. And my dad, he was a banker. He was selected as a director for one of the big banks, but he had to relocate to Johannesburg. He refused. He said, no, I can't. I cannot go stay there. My little boy's in Worcester, blind school. I have to stay in. So he quit his job. He entered the car industry. And every weekend that I got home, there was a different car in our driveway. And like any lighty, I became absolutely fascinated by these cars. 2 I knew, 2 pedals automatic, 3 pedals manual. I was 9 years old when I realized, Hein, you will never, ever, ever be able to drive one of these. And if you do it, it's going to be extremely illegal to do so. I never allowed that dream to die. As a lighty, I wanted to drive a car, but I wanted to do it fast as well. Yeah, my dad allowed me a few times to reverse his car out the garage. And the deal was, you know, it's fine, you can do it, but if you drive into your mom's garden, she's going to be the one sorting you out. Anyway, so there I was, 20 years later, fast forward, and I decided I'm gonna now turn this childhood dream into reality. So I started doing some research to find out, well, who's actually the fastest blind man in the world? British guy, drove a car at 223 kilometers an hour, and I realized my little Toyota Taz is not going to do it. I did some more research, and I decided I will break the world blind land speed record, becoming the fastest blind man on 4 wheels. So the first thing I did is I called up the Ferrari Maserati importers in Cape Town, went straight through to the CEO. I said, hey, my name is Hein. He said, hello, Hein. I said, I'm blind. He said, okay. I said, yes, I'm just curious. Do you have a car that could exceed 250 kilometers an hour? He said, yes. I've got plenty. I said, well, will you sponsor me one for the world blind land speed record? And he said, of course. I got such a fright when the man said yes, I just put the phone down. So the next morning I called him back. I said, hey, I spoke to you yesterday about the world blind land speed record. You said you'll sponsor me a car. Okay, I guess we need to sign a contract. He said, what for? I said, the contract for the car. You said that you're going to sponsor me one for the world blind land speed record. He turned to me and said, listen, young man, yesterday was the 1st of April. I thought you were kidding. I'm like, no. I've never been this serious before. Well, he came to the party, sponsored the car. It took me 6 months to convince anybody to get in. All my friends said to me, Hein, we like you, but not that much. So there I was, looking for help online. I found a company, Speed Record SA. This gentleman promotes South Africa as a land speed record breaking destination. When I read all his credentials, I realized this man is my victim. I have to call him. So I phoned him up, and he said, whoa, it sounds incredibly dangerous, but come see me face to face and we can talk about it. I'm like, oh, face to face, what a waste of my time. But anyway, it works for you, I'll do it. Grabbed the coffee and we sat down. He said, Hein, how are we going to do this? I said, I have no idea. The Guinness Book of Records state you get in the passenger seat, you're not allowed to touch anything in the car, and you have to explain to me very fast where to drive towards. He said, well, Hein, we've got a little bit of a problem. I said, yeah, I can think of a few, but what in particular is your view on this? He said, well, Hein, I'm actually not that great with my left and my right. I'm thinking, dude, which part, if I'm totally blind, did you not exactly understand? He said, but don't stress. I said, what do you mean? Don't stress. You don't know your left from your right. He said, no, but I thought about this. I'm going to stick an L on your left hand. I'm going to stick an R on your right hand. They'll be on the wheel, your hands. I'll see them all the time. There's no way I can mess this up. Well, I thought, okay, well, the guy's got a point. Maybe he can do that. 10 minutes into the conversation with him, I also realized with a massive shock that he also suffers from one incredible stutter. Can you imagine driving at 265 kilometers an hour? This guy goes left. Somebody is going to get hurt in the process. And I'm thinking to myself, brother from another mother, I'm not getting onto a drill with this oak. I'm out of here. But in the back of my mind, I know he's the only man who's prepared to get into the car. So I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm an engineer. I said, what? He said, I'm an engineer. I said, well, if you're an engineer, you must be fairly good with numbers. That's when he worked out the system of numbers where 5 was the middle of the runway. If he says 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm going too far to the right, 4, 3, 2, 1, too far to the left. So basically stay on 5 to stay alive. He's an engineer from Port Elizabeth, South Africa, but you believe me, at 285 kilometers an hour, this guy sounds like an auctioneer. 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 9, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. 295 kilometers an hour. He was speaking fluently, lost his stutter completely. So as we drove off the runway, old John Webb from Carte Blanche was knocking on my window, wanting to talk about the land speed record. And my navigator, Ray, grabbed me by the sleeve from the passenger side. And he's like, there's something I need to share with you. I said, Ray, this is not a good time, man. I also developed a little stutter at 300. He said, Hein, please, I just wanted to talk to you. I said, Ray, if it's got anything to do with what happened in your pants, we don't have to talk about it. Well, he turned to me and he said, Hein, 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. 15 years ago, I lost all the movement in my legs. I lost all the movement in my arms. I could barely tie my shoelaces. I had to give up the one thing I loved most in life, racing cars around the fastest racing circuits on the planet. And I set myself a goal and said, one day, just one day, I will recover significantly enough to get back into a car and drive faster than 250 kilometers an hour. Not only did he do it, he unselfishly did it in the passenger seat, allowing me to achieve my dream. And that brings me to the second universal law I want to leave with you today. And that is simply the law of trust. Nurture your trust relationships. I promise you, I guarantee you that they will turn out to be the most significant relationships in your life. So a dare gone wrong one evening at a Cape Town event was I spoke myself into the Cape, cycling the Cape Epic. The MC of that evening was chirping me after my talk and he said, "Hein, you've done so many things. How about we cycle the Epic?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure. We can do it on a tandem. You sit in front, I'm at the back. And then when we come off the bike in the single track and we fall, at least I'll have an airbag in front of me with your name on it called Gary." He said, "I'll be my airbag." So the evening went on. I went back to my table, I had a drink, I had dinner, went home, and I thought we're going to live happily ever after. Nobody's going to mention this epic nonsense. The next morning he called me, "Hein, last night you signed up for the Epic." I said, "What?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, you know, maybe I did." He said, "Oh, no, it's on video for in front of 350 people. You said you're riding Epic, I'm your airbag." I said, "Okay, you got it." Right. He said, "Okay, but now call them and get us in." I'm like, "Dude, the Epic, it's not a park run. It's 75K an entry." He's like, "But call them." This is a bit of context. What is the Epic? It's the longest, hardest multi-stage mountain bike race on the planet. Commonly over 8 days, 800 kilometers, 2,000 meters of climb per day over the most rough, most wretched, most treacherous, most dangerous, and also most beautiful mountains in and around the Western Cape. Technical single track descents that will make your hair stand up. I do not advise us of your eyes open. I certainly don't advise of your eyes closed. So what did I do? My normal. I called the Epic, speak to the MD. "Can I speak to the MD?" "Yes." I said, "Hey, this is Hein." He said, "Hello." I said, "I'm blind." He said, "Okay." I said, "Yeah, I just want to tell you, I'm coming to ride the 2011 Cape Epic. All of it that stand between me and that is the entry that you're about to give me." The guy's like, "You got to be kidding me." I said, "No." He said, "Listen to me. What did you say your name is?" I said, "Hein, and I'm blind." He said, "Yes, that part I got." He said, "Listen to me clearly today. This race, sighted people arrive here. They think they can bike. They break their legs, their arms, their necks, their backs. They break it all. Listen to me, young man. It is impossible for a blind person to ride this race. I don't even think you can come and watch." I'm like, "Yeah, you got a point, huh?" Okay, I realized dead end here. So I just put the phone down. "Okay, cheers, thank you." But giving up is not my middle name. So I phoned Cannondale. They said, "Oh, we'll sponsor you a bike. No problem. We'll build you a tandem. A tandem will make 10 Epics. I don't think you guys will make one." I'm like, "Why are you all so negative? What's going on here? Maybe I should Google blind mountain biking." I did that. Type it into my browser. Blind mountain biking. Boom. 0 results. I thought, Hein, this is a real bad idea. But then again, I kept phoning the MD, and he said, "Listen, you are the most persistent person I've ever met." I said, "Yes, that's me." I said, "I'll give you an entry for free. But the main trade-off is that we promote your participation as the main story for 2011. The first blind man to attempt the impossible, the grueling Cape Epic." And I thought, what a ridiculous headline. But I knew that if I put my head into this thing, I will go over that finish line. And can you imagine the positive media miles for blindness and blind people and their abilities around the world when we cross that finish line on day 8? I'm going to ask Ruben to quickly show us a short video background on the Absa Cape Epic. I always sort of looked at this thing and I went, people are very, very brave or very stupid to do it. I don't think I can do that.
The Cape Epic doesn't do anything that's not extreme. It takes you very far, very long, pushes you through very extreme conditions. You have to know that the chances of failing is bigger than the chances of succeeding.
Our approach all along was simply, we're going to ride a safe race, and we're not going to be breaking any bones, collarbones, and we're not going to fall off the bike, and all sorts of wonderful dreams about how smooth this whole thing is going to be. Well. It turned out to be the complete opposite.
I
The fact that I'm blind is probably just a personality issue or a characteristic, you know, and so be it.
Hein has to trust me 100%. He has got no option whatsoever.
Get ready? Yeah. It was the first time that a blind person was going to attempt to do this, so we couldn't turn to anybody for advice. When you hit the single track early in the morning, he's still bubbly and talking a lot, but I mean, an epic stage is you lose your sense of humor. In a way, I think some days you completely lose your personality. Swing the bike around, get back up, I've got to find my pedals, I've got to be back on. You know, we're all in a hurry because there's people behind us, you don't want to keep them up, there's that kind of pressure. I need to get my foot into the cleat and then start pedaling, and then this carries on and on and on and on.
Sometimes Hein was quiet, and he was quiet for a reason. He was hurting, and he thought he'd rather keep it to himself rather than talking to me.
Sweeping left. From the downhill. Through potholes. Hold it there. Okay, you can wind it for me. Wind it.
I had to dig in places where I never knew I had places to get through that thing. The focus for 8 days, being on that bike, every moment of the way on the epic, every second of those 51 hours that it took us to cycle, I was another second away from another fall. And I never knew which side that fall was going to come from. So, and by day 4, I was so sore, you know, my ribs, I was purple. And to know that in the next second you're going to fall on that same spot again, and there's not going to be enough time for you to find a way to stop yourself from falling on that same spot. So, it is, it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. And I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed. In my personality, me as a human being, during the epic.
We showed everybody out there that anything is possible.
Now, I know you might have a question for me, and a few questions for me was, you know, why would I want to take on these extreme adventures? And speaking of questions, feel free, I don't know which platform you're watching, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, please feel free to use the comment section to post some questions, and the team will put them to me in a few minutes when I finish with this part of my talk. I'll be very happy to field some questions from you. And as you know by now, I'm not sensitive about my blindness. I think it's my biggest gift. So please, and if it's not related to blindness, feel free, you know, you're most welcome. But the one question you might have is, why on earth do you want to do these painful extreme adventures? Well, it's a good question, and I had to dig deep because I also wanted to know why. What is the real answer? Is it just that I want to show people that blind people can do this? It had nothing to do with it. Maybe once or twice when I got so frustrated with a bank clerk speaking to the person that walked me into the bank about my account, that I wondered, but how can they pretend that I'm not even here? But that was not even 1% of the reason. By the time I was 16, I have climbed Table Mountain 6 times. Why? No, I wasn't a born adventurer. The only reason I climbed it 6 times by that was simply because I got so absolutely tired of sighted people telling me about this picture perfect postcard view of Table Mountain, and apparently every day it looks different. So I had to go climb it to find out for myself what it looks like. And you know what happened in the process? I completely, utterly, totally fell in love with the smell of the fynbos, the texture of the inside of the protea flower between my fingers. And back then I made a deal with myself, and I said, one day if I have a real job, I'm going to go back into nature as often as I can to recharge, revitalize, and re-energize my soul, that I can be ready for the challenges that life might bring my way. And I guess today, of course, I know that my picture of Table Mountain is completely, utterly, totally different to yours. But I've also come to learn it truly honestly does not matter. The second reason I do these crazy adventures to benefit an organization very close to my heart. It's the Hein Wagner Academy, an academy I founded for adult blind education back in Worcester, South Africa. We currently have just short of 40 students on campus doing various courses. The one that we're very proud of is the 3-year international accreditation for blind people to become, wait for it, cyber security analysts. It's completely possible with the latest technology, and we will help to generate, and we will help to propel blind people into the 4th industrial revolution. Ruben, if you could show us briefly just the Academy video. Thank you.
The Hein Wagner Academy was founded by blind motivational speaker and extreme adventurer Hein Wagner in 2019. The Academy, based in Worcester, South Africa, seeks to provide training to visually impaired students to bridge the gap between being dependent and independent as a visually impaired person.
I'll be able to go out there and face the world and explore the possible opportunities available at my disposal.
We need to make people believe that we can do this, and I can tell you we definitely can.
Our vision at the Hein Wagner Academy is to enable the visually impaired to become economically independent and socially connected through education, training, sports, recreation, and the arts.
We change how the world sees the blind and how the blind sees the world. All it takes is a change of perspective.
It brings me to the third and the final universal law that I want to leave with you today. And this particular law has also served me incredibly well over the last 49 years of having had the privilege of walking this earth. And that, my friend, is the sense of giving. If you give just a little bit of what you've got, you will get more than you can ever imagine. Even if it's just a little bit of your most valuable asset, your time. Now, speaking of which, I'm out of mine. But for 1 minute, before we open for the questions, I'm going to take you back to my most traumatic experience. As I was standing in that driveway, getting back from blind school after 5 weeks, and that group of sighted kids rejected me from their playgroup, I took my brothers back out the garage to join them, because this is what I was going to do. 3 hours later, I told you, the tears was running down my face. I was about to give up and throw that stupid bicycle down. If I threw that stupid bicycle down, my life would have probably turned out differently. But you know what? I didn't. I walked 4 more paces. I could hear that clickety-click sound coming back off the pavement. I became a pro at it. Think about the things I had to deal with cycling up and down the road, to stay safe in that bicycle saddle, not being able to see oncoming cars, parked cars, pedestrians, lampposts, trees. We had 2 huge flower pots on either side of our driveway, and I could hear them when I cycled past them because the clickety-click noise went up in frequency. Nobody knew this. I knew it. I could fly between them, stop 10 centimeters in front of the garage door, showing off in front of all these sighted kids. Look at me, I can do what you can do. Now, for me to stay safe in that bicycle saddle, I only use 4 senses, as I only own 4 senses. My challenge to you today is just for a moment, consider the results you can deliver in your personal life, business life, on any level you choose, if you just start using all 5 yours on a daily basis. Yes, we all have different challenges. Mine some days may be darker than yours, and I don't know the answers, but I told you before, the day that I started looking at this major obstacle, this total absence of light, this thing called blindness from a slightly different perspective, it became the greatest opportunity I could ever dream for. Because if you change the way you look at things, I guarantee you the things you look at will change. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am blind. Exactly what is your excuse? I thank you. So I think we will turn our attention to a few questions. So any of you or anybody available to read those back to me, if there are any in the comments, I'm more than willing to take them.
Hein, thank you so much. You've received so many compliments as well. People saying that you're a legend, you're funny, you're amazing, awesome. So I need to just tell you of those compliments, inspirational as well. So yes. The first question we have is, Hein, With all of the challenges you've faced, your successes, and especially your setbacks, how did you manage to keep even the smallest spare of passion or hope from going out? Many have lost all hope.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the beautiful compliments. I really appreciate it. You know, there's, especially in the last 18 months, obviously there's been some very dark times, there's been some difficult times, but for me, you know, I'm going to answer you this way. If you would ask me the question like this, say, you know, all these achievements, you know, running the Antarctica Marathon, naming these epic land speed record, you know, they mean something. But to me, my personal biggest achievement is accepting my blindness unconditionally. Now, I think this has helped me in those dark days, because I never want to go back to be that person before I accepted it, because it took me a long time. And I was fighting it so hard, you know, and trying to change it, which I couldn't. So acceptance for me, things are going to be rough. There will be dark days, but you got to have to find something to hang on to, even if it's just a little bit of hope. There's always hope, no matter how dire the situation. I'll give you a little example. I always wanted children, always wanted kids, but my blindness is hereditary. In other words, there's a very good chance that my offsprings will be blind. And I didn't want them to have to go through that. And, you know, I thought, well, you know, maybe. My previous partners, they were not happy to have more than one blind person in the house. When I met my wife and I was Monica years ago, she just said, well, you know, you'll be a good role model. If they're blind, it doesn't matter. So my little girl was born. Her eyes were perfectly fine. 6 months later, we could confirm there's absolutely nothing wrong with her eyes. On her second birthday, and on her second birthday, this was 3 years ago, she was diagnosed with leukemia. It was one of the biggest shocks in my life. I was worried about her eyes. Now she's got a life-threatening disease. And it took us 3 years to get through the chemo program. And I think in many ways, I'm grateful that I'm living where I'm living at the moment in Scandinavia, especially Sweden, where they have the best results in curing leukemia in kids. And she's perfectly fine. They stopped the chemo treatment 6 months ago. And throughout that process, especially in the beginning, because I lost my dad to cancer as well, I had to find something to hang on to. And even if it just was at the time that I've had the privilege to spend 2 years with her already, there's got to be hope. So never, ever, ever lose hope. It's not worth it. And when you're at the absolute end of your rope, the only thing you can do is tie a knot and hang on.
Wow, thanks, Hein. I'm going to read you other questions as well. They kind of link in with what you just said as well. Hello, Hein. I wanted to know how you make the switch from crippling fear to the resolute decision to just do it. Please walk us through engaging that gear in yourself.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. So I had to develop a relationship with fear at a fairly young age. So maybe I am lucky that I'm blind, because two things like trust and fear, I had to learn very early in my life to trust people quickly, whether it was to walk somewhere or just take their arm or believe what they're saying for that matter. But fear, how do I switch gears? You know what stops us from switching gears normally is the fear. And I had to give fear a name. In fact, I made fear my friend because I think fear is so important, but you have to be able to manage it. Example, if I gave fear a name, because if I want to go buy or do something simple, like going to buy bread and milk, I have to walk, take my stick, go out the door, cross fairly busy roads to get to the shop. Some of those crossings, there could be an 18-wheeler truck, there could be a bus, there could be anything. I have to really focus on deciding when to cross the road, when listen to the flow of the traffic, the signal, etc., etc. So, but the fear is there that I could end up under a bus. Maybe not hearing it. These days there are electric buses, they're even more quiet. But I at some point have to tell fear that, hey, thanks for pointing out that risk. I appreciate it that you're showing me this risk. But right now, you, fear, have to go sit on the couch and take a chill pill. Because me, I have to cross the road because I need to go buy bread and milk. So the day that I started giving fear a name, it was possible for me to manage fear and not allow it to suffocate me. And that helps me to change my gears when I really, really, really need to stay.
It's 12 hours.
Okay, another question is, Hein, I think it's a double barrel question. What has kept you pushing yourself to face harder and harder challenges? And do you have any other challenges that you are planning to take on in the near future?
Yeah, so the first part of your question is, I think in a way, that what I stand for is, one of the things that I stand for is obviously inspire people to overcome obstacles. So by default, I'm in the role that I'm playing and the business that I built around inspiring people. It also leans itself towards more challenges, and people seem to dare me quite often to do things like the Desert Dash a few years ago, which was a tough challenge. I must say it was the longest 24 hours of my life, or the 20 hours it took me to cycle it. So I'm fortunately and unfortunately in a position where I get challenged quite often, and I'm becoming better in saying no. With age, comes wisdom. As far as the second part, maybe you just want to just repeat the second part of the question. I just want to make sure I get it spot on. Okay, I think you asked me more challenges. Yes, that's right. Sorry, it just came back to me. So yes, there's always going to be more. Right now, I am busy training. I just got accepted. I became a Swedish citizen. I hold dual citizenship, South Africa and Sweden, and I recently was selected as part of the Swedish para-triathlon team, and I will be representing Sweden in Spain, in Valencia, COVID pending. COVID restrictions pending in September. It's the first time that I'll be wearing the Swedish colors in triathlon, which is swim, bike, and run. So that's a huge challenge, but also a huge honor to wear the national colors. We sadly lost the soccer last night, Sweden against the Ukraine. So that's the end of that road. But yeah, and then I'm also working on a book. I've been asked to by many of my clients to write a book. So the first thing was easy to find the title. It's going to be called In Hindsight. So I just have to work a little harder on the content now. And yeah, I think a few more endurance challenges in the next couple of years. I guess right now we all just have to ride out this pandemic and stay safe.
Is it okay if we ask a few more questions?
I have the time if you have. Absolutely.
We have more time, yes, thanks. Hein, what has kept you pushing yourself to face, no wait, that's one we just had. Hein, what does one do when they feel like they have lost their purpose in life, or if they cannot find a purpose in life at all?
Okay. So if you feel that you've lost your purpose, it's okay, because maybe that what you thought was your purpose wasn't real. Now that's the extreme case. But if you feel that like a month ago you were passionate about this was your purpose, not anymore, maybe it's just now is a time to just take a breather. And there are so many things bombarding us now from the outside, related to COVID, the survival of this disease, the coexistence with this disease, the trying to, float business. I cannot explain to you the challenge we've had, because our academy in South Africa is largely based on fundraising. Every single student in our academy, they are blind and they are severely previously disadvantaged and living in townships all over South Africa. Imagine being blind and live in a township, just having to find your way. We are, and it's been the most difficult time to as an NPO to keep that as well floating and make sure that everybody's got a roof over their heads, food to eat, etc., etc. So I would be very careful to become to dismiss your purpose at this time, because I think the external factors that are bombarding us from all sides at the moment is too overwhelming. So maybe it's okay if you wait a month or two and then pick up your purpose again. It's never going to disappear, but give yourself some breathing space. I've also had to do that in the past. In fact, in this last 18 months, it was, but am I on the right track? You know, I also started getting these doubts, self-doubts. I'm normally very much switched on, but this thing has shaken our world. All of us, those of us who are overachievers on the inspiring level and normal achievers, and on whichever scale you are, it has rocked all our worlds. But we have to hang on to that rope. It's going to get better. It will.
Oh, thanks. The second last one is such authenticity. What experience solidified your identity?
There were a few. There were a few that one of them was being on a kayak off the Antarctica Peninsula. Now, it's a long story how I got to be in that kayak, but it was part of a 100-man race on the south, in Antarctica. And my cabin mate and my runner guide, we had a deal every morning on the Russian icebreaker that we were sailing on. He would look through the window and explain to me what's happening outside the window. And they were talking about Paradise Bay. And they said, tomorrow we're gonna sail into Paradise Bay. And it's gonna be the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. I was the only blind person on the boat out of the 11 crew members and 100 other runners. And I must say, I felt, okay, well, it's gonna be a long day for me. But anyway, you know, these guys wanna see Paradise Bay, let's do it. So we woke up the next morning, he's sitting at the window in the cabin, in the boat. And I'm like, hey, Mike, what's up? He said, you know, I heard the guy sounds a bit sad. I was like, what's wrong? We're in Paradise Bay. He said, yeah, this is a problem because your next question is going to come that I have to explain to you what this looks like. And I can't. I said, come on, Mike, you got to have to give it a try. You can't like give up like this. He said, Hein, it's impossible. I've never seen something like this. It's like, but come on, just try. So he says, imagine the tallest ice mountain that you can possibly imagine, the tallest glacier ever, thousands of feet high, dramatic. Below it, the perfect reflection of this entire ice mountain in the most crystal clear water I've ever laid my eyes upon. The sun right now is playing tricks of my mind on the water, the multitude of colors, reflections. It looks like paradise. And I'm like, okay, well, I felt a bit envious of the sight at this point. Then, what I didn't know, they arranged for me because they thought I'll get a better feel of this if they put me in the water. So there I'm suited up in 3 layers on my own in a kayak with a paddle, freedom of the Antarctica Ocean. I'm paddling wherever I want to. They'll come fetch me. They'll send the Zodiac after me if I go off to Australia. And as I'm putting my paddle into the water and I'm moving what they call the growlers, which is in summer months, off the big icebergs, small little bergs break off and you just move them around the ice in the water. And as I'm propelling myself forward into that vast open space, the thousands of metric tons of ice and snow around me was so profoundly beautiful in the sense that the way that sound falls and the way I experience sound was something I've never experienced before. It was the first time in my life that I could actually hear the view. Now, I live for those moments. And in all our lives, there are millions of magical moments. We just have the choice whether we're going to see them or let them slip by.
Wow. Hein, so I left this question for last because in Namibia, with COVID, we are going through a very tough situation. And during this hour of talk, I actually heard of a family friend that passed away, a parent of a child in our class that passed away, and of another family member that is in critical conditions. So it's literally happening almost by the minute that you hear of people passing. And this question asks that, Is it possible to have a positive mindset during the loss of a loved one?
My short answer is that that anything is possible. When my dad passed away, because we were very close, and I was only 23, and he was the anchor of the family, you know, the guy we all looked up to, the smiles, the humor, the achiever, the list goes on and on and on and on. And I've missed him dearly, and he's been gone for longer than I've known him, because I was only 23 or 24 at the time, and I'll be 50 soon. And it took me a very long time to accept it. It also took me a very long time to get over it, because it was so sudden. 59, he got sick 3 months later, all over. It was just devastating. But you know what happened is I spent a lot of time thinking about him and unpacking the things he taught me. And all I can suggest is look at the things that loved one you lost. Look at their legacy. There must be things, amazing moments that you had together. And as difficult it is now, you know that the two things my dad told me are the two pillars of my absolute success today. He told me many things, but the two things that stood out is he told me, you know, he had the ability to make you feel like a king or a queen, no matter where you come from, your culture, your background. He just made you, in his presence, you just felt amazing. And I asked him, how do you do this? How is it possible? He said, well, and I thought, if I can just get 1% of that, I'll be the happiest man in the world. And he told me two things. Well, he taught me the two most important lessons in life. Number one is be kind, no matter what. Number two is be generous. Now, kindness and generosity has served me better than possibly any other lesson I've learned in life. And that's the legacy of my dad. That's the legacy of one of the people that was the closest to me, which I lost unexpectedly. Now, if any of that's going to help you, I don't know. But I come back to my short answer. Yes, eventually it is possible. And on that note, I want to wish every single one of you strength, dearness, inspiration, and try and find the light moments in this very, very, very dark time that we are living for. There will be light beyond this. As a friend always said to me, he can be a skeptic sometimes. He said, yes, there is a light in the tunnel. And he goes like, yeah, Hein, it's another train. No, it's not. No, it's not. Leonard Cohen also says in one of his songs, I can't remember the exact words, but it comes down to, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light comes in. On that note, all the best to all of you. Be strong, stay safe, wear your mask, keep the distance. And I'm going to hand over to Gijs to wrap up for us this morning. Thank you, everyone.
Super. Thank you, Hein. Wow. What a profound experience, you know, in these times, to have Hein here, you know, with us, and those just amazing inspirational stories in the times that we live in. I must say, you know, on behalf of Gondwana, thank you, Tinus, thank you, Capricorn. It's a privilege for us to be part of something so profound. And yes, to wrap up, to follow that is a bit unfair and impossible, but thank you so much, Hein. Yes, I want to reflect, you know, on the things that Hein said. You know, we can, you know, also do that very touching question. We can look out there today, and we can see, you know, with our sight, a lot of hardship and a lot of pain and suffering, or we can use our vision. You know, and we can slowly but surely start to create a future that we cannot see at the moment, but a future that we can co-create individually and collectively you know, as human beings, but also as Namibians, for a better future for ourselves and for our children. You know, I love the timing and you know and what Hein said. You know, how can we use these huge obstacles and turn them into major opportunities? And I think you know, we shouldn't just think of that in terms of corporate, in terms of strategy, but also in terms of our personal lives, and how we can enrich our lives and the lives of the people around us. By really looking at these obstacles in a way and frame them as opportunities. To summarize, personally, it means a lot to me what Hein said: appreciation, gratitude. Every single one of us involved here today, you know, wherever you are, we are privileged. You have in front of you a screen, you have the internet. Yes, there's a lot of hardship out there, but there's always something to be grateful for. Let's focus on those. Let's look around that. You know, look at the smile on your child's face, and let's make sure that we find the beauty that's still out there, and focus on appreciation and gratitude. Nurture the trust relationships. You know, we are a small society. We need each other now more than ever. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on that togetherness, that collectiveness, as a country and as a nation. And then, wow, the sense of giving. That is something that's so inspirational. You know, on this side, I also speak on behalf of Gondwana. It's part of our ethos. It's part of our backbone. And there's nothing that gives you more gratitude, more satisfaction, personal satisfaction, than that ability to go out there and to touch people's lives, even in the smallest way. So let's use this inspiration today to go out there, reach out to your neighbors, reach out to your colleagues, and see where we can make a difference. And then the challenge, you know, what is our dream in the hardship, and are we willing to act on it? Are we willing to get off our chairs, get off our couches, get our hands dirty, and really go and build better together, you know, into the future, build a better nation, build a better future for all of us. I love the kindness, the generation. It doesn't cost anything. Let's be that for each other. And in these times, we can decide, you know, will COVID be our excuse, or will it be our opportunity? I know we long for the past, and that is something that we must resist, because we must embrace the future. There's a book that I recently read called Anti-Fragile, and the premise of it is that you know, we shouldn't be robust. We shouldn't stand strong because of a crisis like this, but we must use a crisis like this to be stronger on the other side, to be different on the other side, so that it can have a positive impact. Let's use, it's so difficult to say, but creativity, safety, kindness in these times to build better. Thank you once again for everyone who's joined us. Again, Tinus and the Capricorn Group, thank you so much. Hein, just a wow inspiration. And on behalf of Gondwana, stay safe out there, do the right thing, go and get vaccinated, stay safe, wear your masks, and let each and every one of us play our role to create that light at the end of the tunnel. I thank you.
More than ever, in the last year, we have come to appreciate the magnificence of Namibia. While you were away, nature took a rest, rain replenished the earth, and the desert bloomed. Rivers filled up, grass grew, and water rushed into sources flay. Flowers sprinkled their seeds generously onto the land. The wind sharpened the edge of the dunes, and the wild horses bore fowls. Life slowed down and tourists became travelers. It's time to move on. Namibia is ready for your return. Hosea Kutako Airport has been revamped. Gondwana has introduced the Jimny, the perfect vehicle for the trendy traveler. Rediscover the extraordinary country of Namibia. It's time to watch stars journey through the sky. Oryx running free on burnished sand dunes. Time to visit the old diamond mining towns. Explore Namibia's infinite landscapes and witness the desert meeting the sea in dramatic celebration. It's been way too long. We've missed you.